Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Tiny Toon Adventures 2, Trouble in Wackyland, brought to us by Konami. The third and final Tiny Toons game on the NES was done a bit differently than the first NES Tiny Toons game. This one, instead of being a straight linear action platformer, is a bit non-linear. The characters have traveled to Wackyland, and it's a giant amusement park with 5 different attractions. These attractions work as the game's levels, and you have access to 4 of them right from the get-go, and the 5th one is locked, either needing 50 regular tickets or 4 golden tickets. Before we begin the game, though, we're going to wait a few moments at the title screen to watch the opening cutscene that gives you the game's story before we jump into the amusement park. As we begin the game, we're brought to the Wackyland Amusement Park screen. Here we can select which of the 4 rides that we want to start with. The Funhouse in the center is the final level that we're going to be going to. In order to access it, though, we need to either have 4 golden tickets or 50 regular tickets. We earn a golden ticket for each attraction that we're able to complete, and after completing each one of the main attractions once, we'll have enough to go into that final one. You can also use the points that you earn and convert them into the game's regular tickets at the ticket booth located south of the Funhouse. The first of the attractions I'm going to complete is the roller coaster. This is the one I'm always the worst at, so I get it done with first. While you're on it, you're able to jump with Babs, which can be difficult to land, so if you do jump, don't press left or right on the D-pad. Usually you just want to jump and just stay in the air, and the game will automatically kind of guide you where you need to go. During this roller coaster, you need to consistently flip Babs around so that she's able to kind of get around and maneuver through the maze-like structures, or else she'll end up taking damage, and you only have 3 hit points before you end up losing your chance here. Also, throughout the level and in some other stages, you have Roderick Rat, I think it is, in the windows throwing soccer balls at you. In some levels, you're able to actually attack enemies, and when you attack one of the projectiles thrown at you by them, you can actually knock it back, so that's something to keep in mind. During those very slow climbing segments, you're always going to have another enemy that comes towards you. After the end of this track, it will fall, and you'll have to make a jump over to the right onto the next platform. This is the only time that we're going to be jumping here where we actually press left or right on the D-pad during the course of the stage. After a very slow climb, you'll have to jump over many enemies. We're getting ready for kind of the finish of this stage. You have to quickly maneuver around. You're going to go back and forth while jumping over a handful of enemies also on the track. And if you do it right, you'll be able to jump through the different obstacles, but a lot of times I usually get clipped at least once during this. Very kind of precise, the timing on the jumps that you need to do. Just make sure that you don't press any other buttons other than jump, or you may end up flying away from the little roller coaster thing here. After this final climbing segment, jumping over this enemy, we have one last couple of moves that we have to do. Thankfully, it's not too bad, but you will have to quickly switch where Babs is. So we're going to stay on top, then quickly switch, and then switch again when we get down to the bottom. If you do it right, you'll be able to just barely avoid getting hit, and Babs celebrates as she flies off holding on to the umbrella. Now, when you complete a level, you get bonuses based on beating it, time left, as well as the amount of health you have left. If you use a ticket and you end up failing an attraction, you need more tickets, you can always go to the ticket booth and convert them, or just try to get 50 of them in case for some reason you're unable to complete one of the main stages, like the roller coaster. That one took me a lot to actually be able to finally finish it when I was a kid. The next level is the bumper cars. This one isn't too bad, but it's annoying. Trying to actually move Plucky around can be very difficult. Hold down the charge button in order to launch it, and you kind of want to wait a lot of times. You can control Plucky, moving him very slowly, but if you hit the bumpers, you're going to be flying everywhere. A lot of this is just kind of setting up angles and angled shots to try to get the enemy slowly to the hole. You don't want to fall in it yourself, or you'll end up taking damage. Once you defeat both enemies by knocking them down to the hole, you'll move to the next round. There's 3 rounds here, and you have to complete them within the time limit. In the second round, we're going to go to the top and bounce the rat over to the right. Once we get him done, we're then going to go to the bottom. The other one's probably going to be bouncing around here. It can be difficult to kind of get through and actually take him out, but I'm going to try to get underneath of him and get around if possible. And as you can see, it just causes pure chaos, sending him flying around the room. If I can get him into the area right here, then do a couple of more charged hits as fast as I can. He really slows up when you get to those edges, so you've got to make sure that you put that extra little hit, usually to finish him off, though sometimes the enemy will go down the hole themselves once they just bounce around enough. For the next one, the hole's in the center. We're going to try to work on the right one first. Just work on one at a time here, getting them into the center, and then angling up the shot the best as possible as I can get to the left side here and then bounce them into that center. Now I'm going to work my way to the left side and try to hit the other one and get him now to go into the center. It's very finicky. Thankfully, the controls work a lot better than the bumper car segment of Muppets Chaos at the Carnival, but it's still not that great. Finally, though, after enough bounces, enemy go down the hole, and I'm able to move on to the next level. We have 2 attractions still that we have to complete before we can go into that final level, and next up we're going to do the train. Here we get to play as Hampton, and this is a very slow-moving level. It's in fact the easiest stage, I think, by far in the game. Hampton's actually pretty easy to control. He's able to use that big belly to smack enemies, and you can actually defeat enemies on the ground and in the air. The belly has a pretty good hit radius to it, and while you will have to do a little bit of platforming here using the signs and such, overall it's a breeze compared to some of the other levels. While I was practicing the game, of course, I've been doing a little research, and there really isn't a whole lot of interesting facts about Tiny Toons 2. It was a very late NES release, coming out in '93 in North America and '94 in Europe. The only difficult part about the train segment with Hampton is making sure that you make it to the train when it breaks apart. You have to be on the far right side and make sure that you make it over. You can jump and use the belly move in the air that can help you kind of like propel forward just a smidge that may help you make it to that platform and make it over to that train. The game does feature a level select, but it's only accessible via a Game Genie, as well as there actually was going to be a description of the controls before each one of the levels. So instead of just giving you that little introduction to the stage, it would have also explained the controls, which would have been helpful, especially in the roller coaster one, I think. There was also a cut pause screen that featured Calamity Coyote that's actually pretty cool, with him kind of tapping his foot, holding a sign that says pause. The weirdest thing, though, about the game for me is the title. In Japanese, the game is called Tiny Toons 2 Montana Land e Yokoso, or basically Welcome to Montana Land. So it's a Montana Max themed theme park. However, in North America, the game's name was changed to Trouble in Wackyland, and it even features Go-Go Dodo on the cover, though he's not featured in the game, and the Wackyland, the amusement park that we see in here, is not something that's featured in the cartoon. The Wackyland from the cartoon is pretty much an alternate dimension where anything is possible. Go-Go Dodo can pretty much do anything he wants. That premise could have actually been a really cool and imaginative platformer traveling in the Wackyland with all potential cool setups, but this game here was still enjoyable for what it is. A pretty typical Konami platformer of the era, but it's still pretty enjoyable to play through today. We're slowly nearing the end here of our choo-choo adventure with Hampton. During the next segment, you're going to have a giant boxing glove that crashes down. Basically, you want to be moving in a different direction from the glove, so when it appears, I wait a few seconds or walk underneath of it and then head to the right, giving me enough space between myself and the right side of the screen so I can avoid getting squashed. Because of the momentum of the train, by doing this, the boxing glove will always land behind you. While the game doesn't have many of them, this level actually does contain a boss-like encounter that we have to deal with at the end of the stage. The end here is pretty much just a long waiting segment. The screen will keep on scrolling, but eventually you come to actually the front of the train. Once we make it onto the very front here, you'll see 3 panels at the bottom, or 3 openings. This is where Arnold, the pit bull, is going to start popping out. As soon as he appears, we're going to hit him with our belly, and you have to hit him 5 times in order to defeat him. It's very simple to do so. Just wait for him to pop up, quickly attack him once he does so, rinse and repeat until he's done, and we're moving on to the next level. We're down to the final 2 rides here, the last one before we end up entering that Funhouse to take on Montana Max. For this level, you are controlling Furball. Furball is able to balance on the log, and anytime there's a slope, as you can see, Furball kind of goes into a balancing mode, so you gotta make sure that you're in good positioning to get away from some of the various obstacles. Most obstacles, though, you'll be able to easily jump over. Unfortunately, unlike Hampton in the previous stage, Furball cannot attack, though I think it would make more sense for Furball to attack using claws than necessarily Hampton doing the belly bump, but either way. The biggest troublesome spot here in these parts are going to be you going up the slope, and you're going to have these frogs that eventually jump out at you. What you want to do is just hit right on the D-pad just for a moment, and then immediately slam on the left so you land back on the log, and the frog will end up missing you each time. It is a tad weird sometimes the way it kind of latches you on to the log, but because of that, it ends up usually working in your favor as far as getting back to the log safely. Be very careful here that you make it over to the other log. It can actually be a little bit difficult to get off the log and jump that little gap. Watch out for another frog by, like I said, hitting just slightly right on the D-pad and then back left so that you land safely. Stand still on the log as it makes it over this ramp. No sense in jumping off and potentially falling in anything. We don't have too much longer to go. Stay on the log and let it jump over another big ramp, and then we're going to be jumping to a small contraption that's a bit difficult to control. This is by far the most difficult part of this stage. When you jump off of it, it will stop moving. You can use this to kind of get around some enemies. You're going to have a bunch of sweeties attacking you from both the left and right. Your goal is to keep pressing the button to keep kind of going up. Defaultly, it will automatically fall down, and you kind of have to guide yourself through the various pillars. It can be difficult to get around Sweetie, and I usually get hit at least once, but thankfully, since I still have my full health, I still have that 1 hit point even after taking 2 hits. We're at the end, though. You have to jump over one more Sweetie that's going to come at you at the top here, but if you're able to get over her, you can just stay on the log and ride it through to the end. I also love the absurd ending here. Furball sinks into the water, but then ends up coming out the spout of a whale that pops up. I guess he got eaten and somehow ejected through the blowhole. I don't know how that works, but either way, we're moving on to the final level. The final stage is the Funhouse. Thankfully, Buster is able to use a kick move that's extremely effective for not only taking out the enemies, but also projectiles like the soccer balls that they fire out. The level is a bit of a maze. You can hold down the 1 button to run, which I recommend and you're going to need to do in order to get around some areas. After dropping down the hole at the beginning of the maze, you want to go left, riding along the platform in order to get there. Do the same for the next segment or do a running jump to get across, and you'll land here. You need to do kind of a special jump, but you can do it around the platform and land on the other one to get into this room. Follow along the ceiling, watching out for a few enemies before going to the next door. The next room is another long one, just run quickly through it and you'll come to some springs. Bounce off the springs in order to get across. You can kick in the air in order to take out the enemies that are potentially going to attack you. After going through the door at the end here, you're going to need to do a run and then duck in order to slide underneath of these 2 pillars. Then, fall through the hole here, and you'll land right back at the very beginning of the maze, which also gets you into this door and allows you to continue. Use the spring to bounce up and then go through the next door, which will lead you here in the next segment. This is a very fun dodging segment. You'll be swinging all around. It gets bigger, it will then retract and get smaller. There's lots of bats along the way. Just be careful, don't jump. You can attack while on here, and anytime that you do attack, it comes to a stop. The hit radius of Buster's kick is actually pretty good, so even if you're coming up on an enemy from below or above, a lot of times kicking near it will still end up being efficient for taking it out. Try to do your best to conserve your health. We still have a couple of segments left before we make it to Montana Max. At the end of this room, you'll make it into the next one where you'll see Elmira at the bottom. You can grab some extra health, of course, along the path here, but make sure that you quickly make it over, land on the more solid platforms if possible, and then go through that next door. In the next room, you have a couple of big gaps. Be careful of those before avoiding the sets of teeth that are going to try to nom down on you. Over here, you'll have one of these devices. You can pretty much guess what you're going to need to do. Keep jumping on the right side platforms whenever they're there, so you can keep a nice pace and keep this machine moving to make it across this area. There's no enemies or anything during it. It's just a nuisance to keep trying to move this thing and be careful not to fall off of it. When you land here, just hold down run though and move to the right. You'll have to make one last jump over the final gap, but you'll easily reach the door safely. Here we have the battle against Montana Max. To defeat him, you have to knock bombs out at him. Use Buster's kick move in order to hit the bombs he throws right back at him. If you time it right away, you can hit him with the very first bomb he throws. For the rest of them though, we're going to be running underneath of him, and anytime he stops, we're going to stop as well, and then hit the attack button, launching the bomb he drops right back up. It's a very simple final boss once you kind of get the timing down by using your kick. Once he's defeated though, we can sit back and enjoy the ending, the Tiny Toons 2 Trouble in Wackyland. So there you have it, Tiny Toon Adventures 2 for the NES. I do like the ending, the little parade there, but I also love the little adorable sprites you get for the end here, with all of the various Tiny Toons characters being represented. Honestly, this is one of my favorite parts about the game, and one of the few credit screens that I actually enjoy watching on the NES. As we get to the end, seeing Sweetie and then finally Montana Max, we get the presented by Konami screen, all rights reserved, and that's it. And with that though, that's also going to wrap up this episode of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.